Let's get some first impressions. Hey, Orlovsky, are the Rams the scariest team in the NFC playoffs?
Yes, their offense, when it has Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams, and Cooper Kupp on the field, they average almost 30 a game. They average almost 400 yards a game. This offensive line has gotten better and better and better as the season has gone on. San Francisco's the team to beat, but this offense, when they're all together, can go score against anybody. And to beat San Francisco, I don't think it's going to be about stopping them. I think it's going to be outscoring them.
First, he's got to go back to Detroit. Rex, let's talk about these two incredible quarterbacks, the young C.J. Stroud, the much older Joe Flacco. Who you like in their matchup?
Oh, man,
playoffs?
C.J. Stroud's the guy that I like. I love this guy. I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. It's not even close to comparing him to Joe Flacco. But you know what? I'm still going to take the Browns. And the reason I'm taking the Browns is because of their defense. This is the best defense. They're almost impossible to move the ball on. And what I mean by that is they give up less than 15 first downs a game. All right? That hasn't happened since 2009, Neek.
Who did that in 2009?
Well, I don't know. The Jets.
Coached by Rex Ryan.
Oh, imagine that.
Meanwhile, still in that division, Neek, Steelers, can they do, they sneak in, can they do anything in the playoffs?
Well, not unless they bring Rex Ryan in to coordinate their offense and defense. I think it's been impressive the season that they had, considering all the struggles that they've had. But without a healthy T.J. Watt, I think that they might just be one and done. It's been fun. Congratulations, Tomlin, on keeping the streak alive.
I can't help, Dan, but think back to all the people who wanted to fire Mike Tomlin a few weeks ago. The man is 10-7. Gets back into the playoffs again this year. And I don't know if they can make any noise, but this team is a quarterback away from being significantly dangerous. They will open up in Buffalo the playoffs next weekend. Dan, how about the Steelers?
Yeah, it's a tough draw for them to have to go to Buffalo, but you have to credit Mike Tomlin, to Nick's point, to get them to 10-7. You have to credit Mason Rudolph and the quarterback change. Since he's come over, no giveaways, no turnovers at the quarterback spot. And you got to credit the coordinator change. He turns over the offense to Mike Sullivan and Eddie Faulkner, and those two guys have done a great job of minimizing, simplifying. They attack way more, and they do have that talent on the perimeter. George Pickens, who I wanted them to throw one ball to on Saturday, and then Deontay Johnson. So it's going to be a tough matchup because Buffalo is who they are, specifically at home, and we'll see if TJ plays. But the fact that Mike Tomlin got the Steelers, who played like 9 quarterbacks, made quarterback changes, and people wanted fired, into the playoffs in the AFC this year, it's another just example of how elite of a coach he is.
Absolutely, and he did it in the most competitive division we've seen since the 1930s. Every team in that division finished with a record above 500. That hadn't happened in almost a century. Okay, what can you tell us up to the minute on the future of Bill Belichick?
Well, that is the issue there, Greeny. He pointed out, somebody who doesn't talk about his contract, that he does have a contract. And that's a message to say, essentially, that Robert Kraft either has to fire him at this particular time and owe him the money if that's what he wants, or, again, he's under contract. Like, that's unusual for Bill Belichick to say. And I think the issue here is going to be whether Robert Kraft believes he can trade Bill Belichick for compensation, hold him out, and essentially negotiate with another team that would be willing to compensate the Patriots with a draft pick, or whether he just would be willing to let Bill Belichick go. Look, there's a widespread feeling across the league that the time has come to make a change in New England, that both sides will be going their own ways, and it's just a question exactly of how it plays out and when it plays out. And that's what we wait to see. Now, today, Bill Belichick said he'd be willing to talk about surrendering some general manager responsibilities, some personnel responsibilities, but the fact of the matter is I think most people believe that these two sides are going to wind up divorcing. The question is, what's in the details and how does the marriage dissolve? And that will be the issue here going forward, depending on when the Krafts meet with Bill Belichick. But if they want to hold up this process over draft pick compensation, they can do that because Bill Belichick, as he said, is under contract. Or they could go the other way, which is essentially saying, Bill, thank you for everything you've done here. 24 years, 6 Super Bowl titles, one of the greatest, if not the greatest, coach in sports history. and we're going to move forward here and allow you to go seek work elsewhere. Because make no mistake about this, Bill Belichick is not ready to retire. He does not want to quit. He is a football lifer. That's what he wants to do, and that's what he plans to do in the future. The question is where.
Yeah, when I had Mike Reese on the program, who covers the Patriots so well, last Thursday or Friday, the one thing he would say definitively is, yes, Belichick wants to coach next year. Whether it's in New England or somewhere else, there's no question Belichick wants to coach next year. Remember, Rex, you went up against him forever. I'm not sure anyone actually coached against him more times than you did. There was something about the way he, perhaps. There was something about the way he was talking there that even Bill didn't seem like that. And in mentioning the contract, what does your gut tell you about how this is going to play?
My gut says that Kraft's ready to move on. I don't think there's any doubt about it. And I'll say that because he's had 10 weeks to say, this is my coach.
Right.
And this is the future. We're going to keep going forward. It's not going to happen.
But if what I'm saying is, if there are teams out there, if Kraft decides I'm going to hold someone up for a first-round draft pick, will teams be lined up around the block to get him?
I don't think so.
Should they be?
Not for a first-round pick.
No.
And look, this is a great coach, but he is 71 years old. I mean, Bill Belichick can still coach his tail off. All right? But how long for? And it's not like you're going to get him for 10 years. You want a guy that's going to be the face of your franchise for the next 10 years. That's what normally who you hire. Now, if there's some teams that think, you know what, we're a coach away from being a Super Bowl contender or whatever, maybe that's a team that might give up compensation like that. I think this man earns the right to go out. And I think Robert Kraft can sit back and say, look, we got 6 Super Bowl titles. All right? You let Tom Brady walk out the door. Why wouldn't you do the same for Bill Belichick?
I'll tell you why. The only thought that comes to my mind is they could use more draft picks because they have the third pick in a 2-player draft. Dan, I mean, we haven't started doing all our homework on this yet, but I feel like there were 2 quarterbacks who sort of stand above everyone else in this draft, Caleb Williams and Drake May. The Patriots have the 3rd pick. So if they want to move up, they could use all the picks they can possibly get their hands on to go up there and get the guy that they will try and turn into the next Tom Brady. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, and a main part of the downfall is they've been the 30th ranked offense 2 years in a row. So obviously the offensive production as a whole needs to get better. If we look at this football, it's time in New England. Okay, something has to change. It is time. Now, if Coach Belichick wants to continue to remain the coach, he can't continue to remain the general manager. It's just not working. And if he wants to continue to coach and Mr. Kraft realizes or believes that something has to be different there, then they're going to move on from Bill Belichick. They're 12-22 in their last 2 years. Okay, the only 3 teams that are worse than that are Chicago, Carolina, and Arizona. Quickly think about that. The New England Patriots under Bill Belichick, the greatest ever in the history of our game, are associated with organizations that right now can't win football games on a consistent basis. Dude, in 2019, guys, they were 12-4. They were 12-4. They were the worst team in the AFC this year. Change has to happen in New England or they're fooling themselves.
It's mind-blowing to me that it's actually going to happen, but I think it's probably right. I don't know that I would have the heart to pull a trigger on a man that's brought me 6 Super Bowls, but Robert Kraft must be much more competitive than I am. So it's going to happen. People are still going to be lined up to get Coach Belichick because they do believe. I think he's proven to himself, proven us all, with all the injuries on defense, they're still possibly one of the best, or not possibly, they are one of the best defenses in football. So you add him to a roster that has a quarterback, a roster that can produce offense, and I think they're automatic Super Bowl contenders.
Well, it's interesting because they're 29-37 since Tom Brady left.
Right.
So, okay, and you're 71 years old.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the point. You got to put them somewhere where they have something reasonably close to Tom Brady.
Well, you don't want him touching the personnel department. We saw what it looks like.
We do have the change we've long expected in Washington.
Yeah, moments ago, Josh Harris, the Commanders owner, met with Ron Rivera, and to the surprise of really nobody, Greeny, everybody knew this was coming, fired Ron Rivera, who's had to overcome so much during his time in Washington. There have been 3 different names. There have been different owners. There have been different issues and adversity, not to mention the fact that he had to battle back from cancer and fought back and had so many issues in his way. And today, obviously, Josh Harris made the decision to let go of Ron Rivera shortly after the Falcons last night fired Arthur Smith. And so the changes here are underway as they typically are at the end of the season. Now, here's the interesting part. In Washington, Josh Harris has hired the former Golden State Warriors general manager, Bob Myers, as well as the former Minnesota Vikings general manager, Rick Spielman, to help this organization go through its search process to identify and hire a new head coach and general manager. So Bob Myers and Rick Spielman will be assisting the new Washington group as they try to move forward and shed this group's past. But new people in charge, and there's going to be a new way of doing business for this organization.
Fascinating. All right, Schefter, stay close by. Let me just get the takes from the guys here on this change in Washington. I'll remind everybody, Washington suddenly has a chance to become sort of a sexy franchise. Maybe they got rid of the owner that people generally did not like. They have Magic Johnson involved, which is always kind of a nice sidebar. And they have the second pick in the draft, most importantly. Give me a quick thought on Ron Rivera now out in Washington.
Well, I mean, I thought as soon as I heard Magic Johnson was involved, I knew that meeting with Ron Rivera was not going to go well. I can just tell you.
Okay.
Magic wants to be around the best. Mm-hmm. And I'm gonna say this, that you give up 35 points a game as a DC, when you took over, that wasn't gonna happen. So no surprise here with this. I will say it's interesting. Rick Spielman comes in on this selection thing. All right. Chris Spielman, Rick's brother, is in a very similar role with the Detroit Lions. Okay. Mark it down. They're going to go hard after either Ben Johnson or Aaron Glenn. And there's a guy named Ray Agnew that's, in my opinion, is going to be in place for general managers. They need it. They need something like that. They need to build this the right way. No team has done it better than the Detroit Lions the last, a 3-year process. I think that's what they're going to look at.
Yeah, I think you want to read into these decisions, but I've never hired a general manager to help me find another general manager. So, I assume that Rick Spielman wants to be a general manager at some point. We'll see how this search ends up. But obviously, I don't have any insight, but I know if I'm looking for somebody to do the job that I do, I'm going to end up saying, who's really good at this job, Josh? This guy.
Well, and I get that, but Chris Spielman was the same way.
Yeah.
And it's worked out unbelievably well for Detroit.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you, mark it down. I would bet on this one.
Doesn't mean it won't work out well either way. Dan, quick final thought here on this before we get to Belichick. Your thoughts? Washington, again, the change there. They have the second pick in the draft.
Yeah, my mind goes to the pick. What quarterback do they get? Do they get Drake May, who's North Carolina local, or do they get Caleb Williams, who's a Maryland kid? Either way, whoever they hire at head coach is going to have to make that determination with the general manager of what quarterback do they like the best. And now they have a chance to hopefully finally pick their franchise guy for the first time in, what felt like when they selected RG3, a long time for them to have their guy moving forward. What quarterback do they get?
That's exactly right. As of now, they will not have the first choice. Now, maybe the Bears are willing to trade out of that first pick and they move up and get themselves that option. We'll have to wait on all of that.